Hello, my name is Marek Pollitt, and I'd like to invite you to the 9th part of the Grenton Academy, from which you will learn how to prepare the wiring for connecting the blinds and how to properly configure them in the Grenton system. Internal and external blinds equipped with an electric motor are quite common nowadays. More and more often, we also find blinds which, apart from the fact that they can be automatically opened and closed, also allow for automatic adjustment of the slat inclination angle. Thanks to this, we can regulate how much light should enter our room. In interiors where we do not choose roller blinds or shutters, and we want to cover the windows in a slightly more traditional way, for example with the use of drapery or curtains, we can also do it automatically. It is enough to install electric curtain rails, to which we will hang such curtains, and we will then be able to control their opening and closing in a much more comfortable way. In the case of shades that are to provide shade on the balcony or terrace, such as an awning or an automatic terrace system, they can also work automatically. If we would like our awning to operate automatically, we just need to find a model which can be equipped with an electric motor. Blinds or roller shutters can be controlled automatically locally, for example, only with a button that will be located in the immediate vicinity of the windows. We can also use a wireless solution. For instance, a controller that will allow us to open or close the windows from the remote control. But we can also control our shutters in a more intelligent way, for instance, using the smart home system. In order to automatically control a blind or shutter, as I said before, it must be equipped with an electric motor. There are two types of motors on the market. DC motors, that is, for example, 12 or 24 volts TC, and AC motors, like a 230 volt AC. Since AC motors are a much more popular solution, we will focus only on them. Regardless of whether we want to control our blind locally or in a smart home installation, the control from the electric side will look very similar. This means that an electric motor is placed in our blind enclosure. Now see how the connection of such a motor looks. Usually, 4 wires will come to the motor. In our diagram, the yellow-green wire, for example the one at the top, is a protective wire, and this wire does not take direct part in the control. We use what are at the bottom in the diagram. There is a neutral wire in the middle. This is the so-called zero wire. On the left side, there is a cable that will be responsible for driving the blind upwards, and on the right side, the one that will be responsible for driving downwards. And now, how will it work? As soon as the neutral wire is connected and we apply phase potentials to the wire for going upward, the motor will start to rotate in one direction and the shutter will be opened. When we remove the phase potential from this wire, the motor will stop. And when we give the phase potential to the second wire, which means the one that will be responsible for the downward direction, the motor will start to spin in the other direction and the shutter will close. Remember, however, that with these type of motors, you must not enter the phase potentials for both the upward direction and the downward direction at the same time. This type of connection can seriously damage the motor. We already know how the blind motor works and how we can control it. Let's move on to the first type of blinds. That is, those that will be controlled locally. In this type of control method, the power supply that will pass from our switchboard to the back box next to the blind will be given through the blind switch, once to the upward direction and once to the downward direction, which of course will result in that the shutter will open or close. But note that it will only happen when we stand at the button and physically press it. Of course, this type of control is much more convenient than pulling strings, and we can automatically open or close the roller blinds. But with such control, we cannot connect a bigger number of roller blinds in groups, control such a roller from an application, or set schedules when the roller blinds are to open or close. Another method of controlling blinds is control with the use of blind controllers, the so-called decentralized controllers. In this case, the controller, which will be installed in the junction box, is responsible for controlling the blind motor. let's see what the wiring diagram for such a driver looks like. From the switchgear side, there is a power cord, which is fed to the controller, and then the blind motor is connected to the controller. Such a blind can be controlled in two ways. The first, as in the previous case, uses the button that will be located directly next to the blind. We can open or close it. The second way is much more convenient, because we will use wireless remote controls with which we will be able to open or close the roller blinds without being directly in its vicinity. This type of blind controller is usually mounted in an electric box, which is located in the immediate vicinity of the blind, but you can also find it under the blind connector. That is, in the place where our buttons responsible for controlling the blind process will be, and quite often, blind manufacturers place this type of drivers directly in the blind cassette. This means that if we decide to install blinds and choose those which will be controlled by the remote control, in practice, it means that inside the blind housing, there is simply a controller of this type that will receive signals from our remote control. If we decide on such and perhaps a control model, we will be able to control our roller blind locally from a button or remotely using our wireless remote control. We will even be able to open and close all roller blinds in groups. However, we are unlikely to have access to the schedule when such a blind would open and close automatically, or to associate our roller blind with other devices in the house, for example, with an alarm system, or a scenario of leaving the house which would close all the blinds at the same time. The use of smart home controllers to control blinds gives here by far the greatest possibilities. First, let's see how to prepare the electrical installation in order to properly connect the blinds. If we decide to connect the blind to the smart home system, we can do it in two ways. The first method uses a modern cabling standard, a so-called star topology. As you remember from previous videos, in this system, from all receivers in the house that we want to control, we bring the wires to our electrical switchboard. Look, this is how it looks in a diagram. In the case of the blind, controllers will be installed in our electrical switchboard, which will be responsible for the control and operation of the blind motors. The YDY 4x1.5 electric cable should be led from the switchgear to the place where the shutter will be installed. In such a conductor, one of the conductors will be the protective conductor, one will be the neutral conductor, and the other two will be responsible for changing the driving directions of the motor. If we would like to control such a blind also using a local blind button, then in this case, a cable should be run from the button directly to the switchboard. In this case, it may be a low current cable, for example, a UTP computer cable. Now, see how the installation for several rolls will look. From each blind switch, we run the YDY 4x1.5 cable directly from the blind to the electrical switchboard. And from each blind switch, we run the UTP cable directly from this switch to our electrical switchboard. The electrical installation prepared in this way will give us the greatest possibilities, the greatest flexibility, and without any problems will allow to connect virtually any type of blinds. In the smart home Grenton system, the blinds can also be controlled in a distributed topology. In this case, the blind controller will not be located in the electrical switchboard, but we will hide it in a box under our blind connector. Look what the connection of such a driver looks like. From the side of our switchboard, we bring it will be the protective conductor, neutral conductor and phase conductor. The protective conductor and the neutral conductor, in this case, will also be cross-hatched and lead directly to the motor of our blind, while the phase conductor will be fed to the controller, which will then be given to the up and down direction in an appropriate manner. The blind controller from the Grenton offer also allows you to connect two keys, which can be programmed in any way, and to connect two temperature sensors. So, in the place where the blind controller will be installed, we can also measure the temperature with its help. Also, remember that in order for the blind controller to communicate with other elements in the system, it must be connected to the main Grenton TF BAS bus. Well, one more time. What types of cables should be used in this type of installation? Look, from the electrical switchgear side to our control module, we will lead the main cable. For example, Grenton TF Bus Smart Home cable. Also, from the side of the electrical switchgear, the electric cable should be led to the place where the blind controller will be installed. In this case, YDY 3 times 1.5 is enough. While from the place where our blind will be installed to the box in which the controller will be located, the 4-wire cable should be led. To connect the switch, we can use low voltage cables, for example UTP type. Now, see what it will look like when connecting more blinds. From the switchgear side, we run the main with the Grenton TF Bus Smart Home cable, which connects the controllers located in the switchgear and all blind controllers. From the switchgear side, we supply power to all blind controllers, and the connection between the motor and the blind controller is made locally with the YDY 4 times 1.5 cable. The blind buttons are connected directly to the blind controller. Controlling blinds and the Smart Home Grenton system gives enormous possibilities. In addition to the fact that we can individually control each of the shutters, both remotely and locally, we have the option of grouping the shutters. We can open and close all blinds at the same time, but we can also create groups that will be more tailored to our needs. We can, for example, create a group of blinds that will open only from the east or south, or a group of blinds that will open on a given floor. We can group the blinds in any way and control them in such a way that the management of the blinds is as optimal as possible. We can control them manually and automatically. Automatic, which means that the blinds themselves can open and close at a certain time of the day or night, and they can also react to the outside temperature or weather conditions outside, for example, in strong wind. Undoubtedly, one of the greatest advantages of controlling blinds from the smart home system is the ability to connect them with other devices or systems in our home. Thanks to this, for example, when leaving the house, arming the alarm system, we can automatically open or close all blinds in our house. We can control the blinds with any button which is in our house. It may be a typical blind switch, but it may be a normal switch that we normally use for lighting. On the other hand, the great advantage of controlling the blinds of the Smart Home Grenton system is the ability to control them from the My Grenton mobile application. In this application, in addition to the fact that we can control all the blinds that are in our house, we also have the ability to control heating, lighting, and multimedia devices. The My Grenton application is available for both iOS and Android devices, but its greatest advantage is the way that it works, and looks can be adapted to the needs of users. This means that each of the household members can have their own application that will look completely different and will also work in a completely different way. The application is free and allows you to control the blinds both in the local network, Wi-Fi, and from anywhere in the world using the internet connection. We can also control the blinds using our stylish touch panels. Grenton's offer includes touch panels, 4 and 8 buttons, which are additionally equipped with a temperature sensor and a light level sensor, as well as Grenton Smart Panel with a display which in addition can be used to control blinds, allow you to control the lighting, heating, or replacing room thermostats. In addition, in emergency situations, they can display a message informing, for example, about the appearance of flooding in our home. Now, see how quickly and intuitively blinds are configured in the Grenton system. Let's start with the basic configuration. I would like my left button of the switch to close the blind, and the right button to open it. For this purpose, we find on the list the objects that correspond to our button. For example, in my case, it will be the left switch. Then I select the on-click event from the events and find the blind on the list that I would like to control. For example, it will be a shutter in the living room. I select the shutter object and then choose the move down method, that is, close. At the same time, I would like to be able to precisely set the position in which the blind should stop after a longer hold. For this purpose, I select the hold down blind method for the on-hold event and proceed in the same way with the right switch. So, here we also add the move up method to the on-click event, in this case driving up, and to the on-hold event. Hold up, for example, holding down. In this case, holding down, it should move, and when the key is released, it should stop. We send the configuration and we will see how it will work. And now watch. Click the button. The blind goes down. I click on the second button and the blind goes up. Now, if I press the button and hold it down, you can see that the blind is moving. However, when the button is released, it stops. I press again, keep holding, the blind goes in the same direction. I release the button and the blind stops, and now it moves in the opposite direction. We hold the key, the blind goes up. We fixed the position and we stop it. Now watch. The same role can be easily assigned to a completely different button. Take, for example, the buttons on my smart panel. We take the first button, and similarly to the on-click event, I will run the move down method, in this case driving down. And to the key number 2, here, also by clicking, I will start the move up method, in this case driving up. Okay, and after sending the configuration, we'll be able to see how cool it works. And now have a look. I click on the switch button, the blind goes down. I click on the smart panel button, it stops and goes up analogically. The blind in the Grenton system can also be controlled with a single key. Now look, if we want to control with just one button both the upward movement and the downward movement of the same blind, we select the button we would like to control. On click, I choose the start method. The blind start method works in such a way that when it is activated, the blind will move in one direction. Another pressing of the button will cause the blind to stop. And the next time it is called, the blind will move again, but this time in the opposite direction. Okay, we'll send the configuration and you can see how it works. I press the button and the blind goes down. Another pressing of the button causes the blind to stop, and another press to make the blind go up. This is what it looks like in the case of blinds configuration. And how does it look with the shutters? Check it out. We'll look at the roller shutter object and its built-in features. You will see two types of time here. One is blind max time and the second is lamel move timeout. The first parameter is responsible for the upward time travel of our blinds. All the time it is full opening. That is the sum of these two times. It is the full opening and closing of our shutter. So now, if we wanted to configure our blind in such a way as to be able to adjust the angle of the lamellas, we would configure the opening and closing on the smart panel buttons in the same way as before. In this case, to the on-click event, we are going to add the set lamel position method. For button 3, we will set 45 degrees and immediately change the label here so that on the smart panel it is very nice to see which button is 45 degrees. And on key 4, for the on-click event, we will set the lamellas in the 90-degree position. And just like before, The label tells us that this button is responsible for the angle of 90 degrees. Now see how it will look after sending the configuration. For the on-click event, we will set the lamellars at 90 degrees and the label in the same way as before. First, we will close our blind, that is, lower the blinds. In the case of blinds, in order to be able to control the angle of the lamellars, it must be in the lowered position. Now, first of all, we will start the opening of the lamellars at an angle of 45 degrees, and another button, the angle of 90 degrees. Of course, we can also fully close our lamellars. As you can see, using the same module, we will control both the operation of roller shutters and blinds with the possibility of adjusting the angle of the lamellars. You already know what controlling a single roller shutter looks like. What if we wanted to close or open all the blinds at the same time? For this, we create a script. We add a new script. We call it Shut Shutters. And now we add actions to our script that will close all roller shutters in our house. So first we choose the roller blind in the kitchen and the move down method, and we do the same with all roller blinds that we have at home or that we want to be included in our group. In my case, I only have 3 blinds in my project, but of course in your house, if there are more of these blinds, you just add them all to the same script. Okay, our script will close all blinds at this point. In this case, we will create another script that will open all the blinds. And now, analogically to the first case, we also add actions for individual shutters, while in this case we will use the move up method. In other words, for each of the shutters we have at home or the one we want to include in the given group, we choose the method going up. And at this point, we have 2 scripts created. And now we can connect these scripts, for example, in the buttons in our touch panel. And as you remember from the previous parts, the scripts are on the list of CLU methods. So we select the CLU module and select from the list of scripts those that we would like to run under this button. We will connect the script Open Roller Shutters to the key number 3. And to key number 4, we will assign the execution of the script which closes the blinds. And after sending the configuration, you will be able to see how it works. And now, look, when we push the button, all the blinds will go in the same direction. Pressing another button, we will drive in the opposite direction. So, we already know how to turn on and off a larger group of roller shutters at the same time. Of course, you are free to create your own groups. They don't have to be all the blinds in the entire house. In this way, we can open the roller shutters in the living room on the first floor or, for example, on the east or south side of our house. And what about the automation? For example, if we wanted all roller shutters to open automatically at 7 AM. To do it, we start by creating a virtual object of the calendar type. We select it from the list of virtual objects. We call it roller shutters _ wake up. Then, in the calendar rule, enter the time at which it should be triggered. Let's say we would like our shutters to open at 7 in the morning. We can also define which days of the week. For example, I would like my shutters to open at 7 only during the week. Then, if we already have a calendar rule configured in this way, we go to Events. We assign the Open Roller Blinds script to the On Calendar. We assign the Open Roller Blinds script to the On Calendar event. Now let's add roller shutter controls to our mobile application. For this, we go to our interface in the My Grenton application. We are adding another page, with which we will want to control the blinds. We can also change the icon and description here. And now, to be able to control the roller shutters, it is enough to simply select them all, or the ones you want to control, drag them to our page. And now, look at the list of widget templates. We have two types of widgets to choose from. The first version, Roller Shutter, is a simplified version of the widget. Version 2, or Roller Shutter V2, is more extensive and also allows you to control the lamellas. Okay, I have already added my blinds. We can, of course, change the names here. As you remember from the previous parts, when naming objects in My Grenton, we can use Polish characters and spaces. We now have added the possibility of individual control of each roller shutter to the interface. If we would like to run them in groups, we simply drag the scripts that we created earlier to our interface, just like the roller shutters. Now we have added a script to open the blinds. We'll also add for the closure. But look, each of these scripts takes 1 bar for us. Quite a lot, right? We can do it with 1 double bar. For this purpose, it will delete these blinds again. We'll add a double bar here. And now, I will add the script, Open Roller Blinds, to the Open action. And the script, Close Roller Blinds, to the Close action. We will also change the background. Okay, we can now send the interface prepared in this way to our smartphone. Press the button Send Interface to Telephone. We run My Grenton applications on the phone and scan the QR code. Look, we can now check how our interface works. We go to the page where we have inserted the roller shutter control buttons and now see how the shutter control widget works. We can use the slider to precisely define the position to which our roller shutter should open. Also, using the second slider, we can control the tilt of the lamellas, in the case of shutters. Of course, we can also close and open all roller shutters at the same time in our application. As you have seen, the configuration of the roller shutter in the Grenton system is very simple, intuitive, and offers enormous possibilities. We often get questions from you about what roller shutters to buy, so that they can be combined with the Grenton system. When deciding what roller shutters to buy for your home, it is best to choose those that can be controlled by applying voltage directly to the motor terminals. If we buy roller shutters already equipped with a radio controller for our home, for example one that allows them to be controlled by a remote control, it will not always be possible to connect them with the smart home system. And even if it is possible, we will probably have to bear the costs twice due to the necessity to do so by adding another driver. Therefore, it is worth considering the selection of roller shutters at an early stage and purchase such roller shutters which, when combined with the smart home system, give us much more opportunities, and additionally, it will be financially more beneficial. Thank you for your attention, and I wish to invite you to the next part of the Grenton Academy, from which you will learn how to configure the Grenton Smart Panel. See you next time.